Episode 45 of Beyond the Blast Door is full of sexual innuendos and learning that Jesse has arachnophobia. I didn't know. I feel bad. He had a spider on him. You saved him.
You saved his life.
I saved his life. It was incredible. Did you see how I clasped the spider, threw it away real quick?
The only downside is that the only way to fix this is you're going to have to burn the place down.
You almost got to second base with Jesse. I'm proud of you.
It wouldn't have been my first opportunity.
Do we have human resources on this show?
We do not.
Excellent.
I'm human resources. We have a really great episode ahead of us. New casting news for episode 9. We got some more Battlefront 2 details now that Jesse has played the new Clone Wars stuff, and we're learning that the Clone Wars stuff is going to come to us over the course of the next several months, so we'll dive into that a bit. Not a whole lot of comic book news. Really interesting stay on target topic this week with Hollywood and how other movies are going up against Star Wars movies, like how in the last couple years movies aren't backing away as they used to in the past. So we'll dive into all this and more. First segment, though, is Real Talk, where if it's on the screen, we're going to talk about it. And our first topic is cast news for Episode 9, Matt Smith, the Doctor himself, and Dominic Monaghan, who I didn't realize is Lord of the Rings, Mary.
Yeah, he's Mary.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool to see two mega chains like those,
Lord of the Rings, Doctor Who, coming together,
converging on Star Wars.
We've had a nerd boner all week, and it's been exciting.
You're excited. You're excited about Matt Smith. Go ahead, dive into it. Why are you so excited? Do you think he's going to fit in Star Wars?
I think he can fit wherever he wants to fit, and it's been really fun watching Reddit and Facebook and all these little comics come up where he's like as a doctor with the sonic screwdriver, pretending it's like a lightsaber and stuff. It's kind of fun. I hope he does better than he did in Terminator Genesis, because that was a terrible movie. Not to blame him.
Have you watched him in The Crown?
I have not.
He's ridiculously talented in that series.
I think he's ridiculously talented in general. So I'm excited that he's going to be coming into the Star Wars universe. Good to see that Mary, Dominic Monaghan,
yeah.
He's going to be joining in too, so that'll be fun and exciting.
There's multiple ways you can say his name. Only one way is right, but we don't know which one.
Do you think he'll be a Hobbit in this movie? Do you think he'll be full size?
I think he'll be an Ewok. I think they're going to bring back the Killer Bears, and he'll be like...
So we are going to go back to
Chief
Endor.
Trippet's son. No, I'm completely joking.
Okay.
I think that'd be funny.
It wouldn't be Chief... like Warwick by now has probably jumped this,
Warwick's probably dead.
Warwick Davis?
Or not? No, Warwick is the actor. He's alive.
Wicket.
Thank you.
Wicked's probably Chief now.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the one that found the princess and.
Houdini.
Jesse, I know you're a Lord of the Rings fan. Are you also a Doctor Who guy?
I am not a Doctor Who guy,
and you're
unfortunately.
Like I've tried so many times with you to dive into Doctor Who, but I just can't make it happen.
So I'm the only Whovian at the table.
Yes.
So I'm just really excited for Matt Smith joining on.
Jesse, here's my question. Is this a thing where you're getting two very familiar faces from two different, very popular sci-fi series? Like, is there an issue here of like when you see Matt Smith come up on the screen, or you see Mary pop up on the screen? I'm gonna call him by his Lord of the Rings character name. If you see these guys on camera, is that gonna take you out of the movie? You think?
Here's the thing. Maybe it's just me, but up until and I know I'm gonna get a rap for this probably in the comments. I didn't know who Matt Smith was prior to show notes.
I'm not judging you at all.
Okay.
I'm judging you hardcore right now.
Because you know what? Doctor Who, it's grown in popularity. It's still kind of cold.
And then on the opposite side of that, with Dominic, yes, he's had other roles since Lord of the Rings, but I mean, Lord of the Rings has been...
That's what he's known for.
10 years now? Is it about
since
more?
Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
Oh, the last one came out in 2003 was the last one.
Oh, really?
And
I
think
in the
they filmed
fourth
it in
grade.
like 97 to 2000 is when they filmed it.
Well, so about 12 years? You get my
like
point, though.
15.
He's not an actor that's been constantly in the limelight.
He's not mainstream.
Yeah, so...
I mean, he's done stuff. He was in Lost for 74 episodes, and he's had
I'm not saying he hasn't done anything.
Couple series over in the UK. So, I mean, he's got a resume. He's been working for the last...
Another buddy of JJ that he brought over from Lost.
Yep.
We just keep piling them up.
Hey, you know what? As long as
okay.
the writing and the roles are good, I'm down with it.
Well, it brings to mind the second topic in the show, which is that Greg Grunberg's character, Snap Wexley, will return for Episode 9. And it's not surprising, but it's great news to have. Really enjoyed the character in Episode 9. and we were learning what happened with Black Squadron in the Poe Dameron comic. We've learned where they are during The Last Jedi. Excited to see him come back, Jesse. Do you think that Snap is going to have a larger role in 9 at all? He's kind of like he's like this trilogy's Wedge in a way.
Yeah, that's actually a nice comparison. I mean, there's no replacing Wedge. I'd love to see Wedge come back. Hint, hint. I want you back, Wedge. But no, I think he's a cool character and everything. And the actor himself, he's been in other great roles. Phenomenal in Heroes. That's been ages ago. Man, God, I'm old.
You're not that old.
I'm old.
You're getting older, though, by the minute.
Congratulations. Today you've set a record for yourself for the longest consecutive days that you've been alive.
Wow.
If you're lucky, you'll break that streak tomorrow, too.
Assuming there's no more spiders in this place.
So Grunberg, you're okay with. David, how do you feel about it?
I mean, he's just kind of side back character, so I'm not overly excited.
But his passion, episode 9, did that not inspire you? I mean, he was my favorite part when they were on Dakar, and he's like, "So what's the plan? What are we gonna do?" And I was like, "That's my guy. That's my dude."
Woohoo! I didn't even know his character had a name. I figured it was something like guy who stands in the background looking pretty number 4 or something.
Oh, well, he's kind of a character that if you dive into the Aftermath books, you learn a lot about Snap and the relationship he has with his mother. So it's like one of those things where if you're a canon junkie, you learn to love him a lot.
Where I have to read the things that aren't on the movie. Okay.
Listen, I'm right there with you.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't have much of a social life. That's why I read the stuff. We'll bleep that out. Keeping it a family show. Third topic for Real Talk. We're kind of just cruising along because all of them kind of hook up. I'm jumping a little bit around in the show notes because I think it's going to flow better if we go right into Donald Gleason talking about how he's read the script for episode 9.
The whole script.
And he has regrets about this. He did an interview. We snagged this story, I believe, from StarWarsNewsNet.com. Just the fact that he's read the script and he's scared. He's talking about in the article he has nightmares where he's on the subway and he's muttering Skywalker does this, and then the world knows. And so how is he going to keep this a secret for the next
9 months or something like that?
It's like a year and a half
18.
now.
Well, you could cut your tongue out, and then nobody will understand you.
That would probably make the character better
please
for
don't
episode
do that.
9.
Well, he was good in 7.
Great in 7.
I really it's such a drastic difference in just how the First Order was portrayed in 7, and then into 8.
They're like clowns in 8.
Yeah, and 7, his speech, I had goosebumps and chills because as a history major, it was scary because he was basically Space Hitler, which is just a scary, terrifying, individual, real life, real life, Hitler was just scary and everything. And even he said in an interview about that role, it was just I kind of watched that as kind of a reference, and he's like, it was scary for me. I want to see that Hux back, not some little puppet throw around toy.
You might have a chance. The benefit I think of having JJ come back, and I've changed my tune on this a lot, but The Last Jedi made me like The Force Awakens a lot more. Let me identify things in The Force Awakens that I like a lot more. And with JJ coming back, he's able to make that sequel treat, it's sequel to his original movie, and I think you're going to see some things kind of put back on the track.
Are we happy that he's taking over episode 9, or do we wish that it was still Trevorrow taking the torch and running with it?
Honestly, and my thoughts is they should have kept him for the sake of continuity. It should have been the same director
for all 3.
Even
though the other trilogies didn't have the same director, all 3.
Well, the prequels had George.
These days, just how it works. It's just
did George do all 3?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's kind of like with Lord of the Rings. Peter Jackson initially was just kind of supervising for The Hobbit. And you can actually, in the movies, tell where he actually stepped in and took over and everything. So you're going to see that big difference.
I don't know, because the original trilogy, back in the early 80s, Empire was a huge diversion from the tone and the stylings of A New Hope.
but it was worth it.
It was totally worth it. It was George handing the keys over to Irvin Kershner, his instructor from USC. And then you have Bernard, who's the guy who did Return of the Jedi? Look that up, because I don't want to botch his name up.
But George was an active part on the set. Where,
right.
Yeah, maybe JJ visited the set for 8, but...
Richard Marquand.
Thank you.
Marquand.
he's not somebody like I don't feel like he was actually there like 90% of the time kind of thing, you know, like.
I wanted JJ to take it, but it sounds like they had. I mean, if we go back, because we were talking about it on the show, it seems like their next guy on the list was Rian Johnson. If JJ said no, and that the news kind of came out within a couple of weeks, I believe, if I remember that correctly. Having seen 7 and having seen 8, for me personally, I would have liked JJ probably to have done all 3. Even though I think there's some value in having such diversity where you have each movie is done differently, but the same timeline. Like, I would have liked the story group and JJ for Force Awakens to come down and say, okay, this is what we're doing in 7, and this is the objective in 8, and this is the resolution that has to happen by the end of 9. And then I think as long as you're following that plan, throw in any director that's capable and that has a passion for the project, because
but have a more consistent story group.
Right, because everyone can agree. You watch The Last Jedi and you look at The Force Awakens, they're 2 totally different movies. The Last Jedi doesn't look like a Star Wars movie. Mm-hmm. It is a really nice looking movie that happens to be told in the Star Wars galaxy, but it's not a Star Wars movie, and there's such a difference in that. But that's also why I think that Rian Johnson should be given movies in the Star Wars world that have no characters that we have attachments with. Because I think if he does all these things that he does with characters that we have no feelings for, I think everybody loves it. Like, across the board, I think everybody would be losing their minds. But because he did some decision-making with the characters that we all have loved for like 24 to 40 years, you know, people, I don't want to use the... they're upset. They got their feelings hurt. I think that's a polite way of saying it. So that's kind of how I look. Cause I think I've been pretty open on the show. Like, Last Jedi for me took a lot of risks that didn't pay off for me, and it's not a movie that I particularly enjoy. But I know that, like, you know, Jesse, it's in your top 5.
Yeah, and I mean, we could sit down and really break down all the great points of all current 8 movies, you know, that are part of the mainline story. But yeah, I mean, for me, Empire is always going to remain number 1. New Hope's always going to be my number 2, with Return number 3. You know,
did you try to tell me that Return of the Jedi is your favorite Star Wars movie?
It was when I was a kid, before they did these special releases.
Oh, really?
Then I think it sucks. It has significantly dropped on my list. In fact, I would even say a couple of the prequels might be better than the re-release of Return of the Jedi for me.
You know, that's something that's been interesting, is that like, I've been seeing this actually all over, is like fans that are upset with the sequel trilogy. They're going back and actually looking at the prequels and going, okay, yeah, this was bad, but like, there's actually some really good like plot points.
There are some good plot points.
Oh, conceptually, it's great. It's just he wanted to tell a 9-hour story in 2.5 hours, and he
especially now that they have basically, you've got right now at least 6.5 seasons of the animated Clone Wars series to fill in, like a story gap in between episode 2 and 3.
5.5. There'll be 6.5 after the return.
Is it?
Yeah.
Anyway.
But your point is totally valid.
Yeah,
I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah,
that, and you have Rebels filling in some stuff. So let us know down what you think in the comments below, as far as, are you excited about this whole thing that we're getting all these we're getting these new faces, we're having return characters. We kind of went off on a tangent there, but I thought it was kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. I thought it was nice. How do we feel about Rian Johnson's trilogy still being a go? He confirmed that on Twitter. This is the last topic for Real Talk.
I'm probably going to get booed for this too. I'm okay with it. You kind of mentioned it before. If it's brand new characters that have nothing to do with, your mainline characters, I'm okay with it. Like, there was some amazing scenes shot in The Last Jedi and things that were done really well. I mean, that last moment between Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, I thought was just emotional. That was emotional and strong. That last moment with Luke, before he, won with the Force, powerful moment. So it's not that Rian Johnson isn't a capable director. I just don't think he should have been given the car keys to that part of the story.
The OT characters, yeah. What do you think, David? Because he confirms this in a tweet. Some random Twitter user hits up Rian Johnson a few days ago on Twitter and is like, "Hey man, is that trilogy still in the works?" And all he responds with is a yep and a fist bump emoji.
I don't know what a fist bump emoji looks like.
It looks like a fist.
Noted. I'm okay with him still having a trilogy. I would still love to see more lightsabers in the Star Wars universe that Disney has taken over, because I feel like everything they do, they try to take that out. But I think with Johnson, we'll get a lot of really cool graphics. I think we'll get a lot of really cool emotional touches. But I also think it's probably going to pander towards a younger demographic, which isn't a bad thing. Star Wars was made for the kids. That's how we all got hooked on it, and we just continue to enjoy it. So I'm looking forward to it. I would like to see some of these other side projects that Disney has talked about doing and then shelved, like maybe Boba Fett or an Obi-Wan. I'd be more excited for that than I am for a new trilogy from...
It's going to be a long time, I think, before we get a standalone story, though. I think that concept
I
has
think
died.
they're trying to course correct. That basically, they're focusing, I think, on 9 now and trying to redeem that.
Make that really good. And we touched on it
Yeah.
last week. I really hope that the numbering ends with the Skywalker saga. I just want that to be a Skywalker saga. I think that would be a nice touch. One thing that I want to make a mention of before we go on to Pages, Pixels, and Pieces, if you have time, you haven't already, Disney did release a more in-depth featurette on Star Wars Resistance with Dave Filoni talking about Xandu and the other characters and meeting that squadron that will be helming that show. Go ahead and check that out. We had that on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. If you haven't watched that already, go ahead and check that out. Pretty interesting stuff. Just don't have time in the show right now to dive into that. But hopefully as we get that first true trailer, we'll get more information about this series because it debuts on Disney XD here in October. I mean, we're like a month and a half away from its release. So looking forward to see what happens with that. Pages, Pixels, Pieces. Let's dive into it. Segment brought to you by the Fantasy Shop in Maplewood, Missouri. Proud to have our local comic shop as our official sponsor. Comics, collectibles, toys, Magic the Gathering, board games, and Doritos chips. The Fantasy Shop in St. Louis, proudly serving St. Louis since 1981. I have a really bad tendency of going in there, and I pick up the bag of Doritos, and then I put it back because I'm a calorie counter now, and so they just wreck me. We have we had an okay week in comics. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the comics.
I think it was a pretty boring week in comics.
Well, let's break it down. This week we had Star Wars, Lando, Double or Nothing, Poe Dameron, was it Annual 2?
Yep.
Star Wars Adventures 23, and then we had 2 graphic novels come out. You had the completed Star Wars The Last Jedi graphic novel drop, and you also had a New Hope graphic novel drop, which is maybe something that is worth. I haven't been able to see that. That was something
that might be worth picking up.
David let me know about it right before the show started, and so if you're a fan of the New Hope and you check out that artwork, if it looks good to you, then go ahead and dive into that because I think it's kind of fun to go experience those movies through graphic novel form. Does it look pretty good?
I mean, it's definitely designed for the younger kids. Here's the cover of it if you haven't seen that yet.
Oh, it's
You can
kind of
not
Star Wars
really-
adventure.
It's
Yeah.
not really a graphic novel animation I was thinking of. I was like,
No,
in my head,
it's-
Watchmen.
Yeah, I guess I was kind of imagining like, I'm trying to think like a.
The artwork will not end up in a museum one day. It is not something you'd put on a shelf.
Yeah, you're probably right.
It's what you pick up to give to a kid that they can get all messy and sticky and covered in Oreo, Cheerio goop. And
I was thinking of like a J. Scott Campbell kind of style.
What
you
you're
know,
saying
that
is
comics there.
we're not going to have Indiana Jones going, it belongs in a museum.
no,
Okay.
no, not at all.
Hey, are you excited for a 5th Indiana Jones movie?
If
I
it's
am.
done right.
I think it's going to end with him in the casket.
If there's no Shia LaBeouf, I'm all for it.
Crystal Skull kind of hurt me.
God, so remember when Michael Arndt was helping with? No, wait, he wasn't doing the script. For the 4th Indiana Jones, was he? He was never involved with that, right? He was only involved with The Force Awakens, right?
Who?
Michael Arndt.
I don't know. We can Google ARNDT.
Crystal Skull was good up until the aliens. That's a whole different podcast and a whole different subject.
When
Oh,
he
so you-
started swinging from the tree, Shia LaBeouf should have just not been in that movie. What am I looking up for Arndt?
I don't know. Let's just move on. So, like we're saying, just not a whole lot going on with comics this week. Haven't really gotten into the Lando Double or Nothing. We read the first couple of issues. They're longer comics. I think if you like what Donald Glover gave you in Solo, you're going to really enjoy that comic, which I did. I didn't latch on to the comic book series.
Action sequences are pretty cool to watch. There's a pretty neat flight sequence. There's a pretty neat shoot 'em up scene, which is kind of cool. And then the second half of the comic is just boring talking to people, moving the plot forward, but nothing really shot about.
I really like your breakdown of that comic. You should do that more often.
Oh, excellent. Would you like to hear how awful I think the Poe Dameron annual #2 was?
Yeah, let me know.
Well, it is awful. Everything from the plot line to the artwork. Okay, so we always complain about Salvador LaRocca.
Yes.
And how his faces look weird.
Yes.
Did you take a look at this face here?
Oh, Christ.
Look at that Leia. Look at that Leia.
Oh man,
That is just awful. I don't even know how to describe that. Like
it looks like a Disney, like a true like Disney, like Seven Dwarfs style.
like
Oh,
a rotten potato. Does not look like a rotten potato of some sort? That
What
face.
what did they do?
Well, they did not. They did not do well, is what they did.
What did they let Mike Tyson like beat the crap out of her in this comic book or
Well,
something?
you're assuming that he has a history of domestic violence.
You know,
Let's go
it's-
ahead and take a look at the comics that we have coming out next week, though, because there is some light here at the end of the tunnel. Dr. Aphra Annual #2, Say What You Want. The series sells very well, popular amongst the fans. You also get Star Wars 53, Hope Dies, Part 4. Probably my favorite arc so far in this Star Wars mainline, just because of that entrance that Vader gets 3 issues ago, where he pops in at the last issue. Then Part 2, he is making sure that the Rebel Alliance takes their they figure out what's about to happen before he attacks. Like there's no he doesn't just swoop in and just slaughter them. He shows up and he waits until he senses the fear develop, and then he wrecks. So Part 4 is coming out, which is really cool, and also Darth Vader line. We're going to get a next issue here coming up soon because we're going to dive more into how and why he built that castle on Mustafar. We kind of got the why in the last issue #20, but I think 21 is going to dive more into the why specifically. Because I want to know, is that castle built where he fought Obi-Wan, or is it just somewhere on the planet? My assumption is that he destroyed that mining facility, built up the castle, and then what is in that castle? I think there's a Star Wars locations book that shows you part, but I think there's a lot to explore there. So looking forward to see that in the comics.
Don't quote me on that. You remember that visual guide, that latest visual guide?
Yeah.
That
First, the Rogue
it's
One
it's
one?
it's current up to I think Last Jedi.
Okay.
I think it mentions Vader's castle in it.
Can you bring that next time?
Yeah, I'll take a look at it and see if it has anything in there.
Cool. So we'll check that out.
David, can we stay in Pages, Picks, and Pieces for one more minute? As I was trolling around the interwebs for this episode, there's a comic one-shot that came out that we didn't talk about at all. Came out August 15th or something like that, so a couple weeks ago. But it's a Beckett book, all about Tobias Beckett. It's a one-shot. They're not doing any more, at least at the moment. There's nothing planned, but it's a really fun comic that just focuses on him and his 2 compadres.
Before the movie takes place.
Before the movie takes place, because they're still alive, the gal and the
Such
guy
a
with the
cool
forearms.
character.
And it is, but it's a fun kind of Western type. I don't even know what the right word to describe it is, but it's got a really neat vibe to it that I recommend everybody go and pick up, and it's a fun read.
I thought Beckett was a great character in the movie.
He's
And
fantastic. Honestly, don't get me Aldrich's solo was good for what it was, but Beckett for me, just his character was badass.
I think that because I shouldn't have concerns about Matt Smith, going back to the first topic of the show.
Yeah.
Because Woody Harrelson is probably one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood, and he didn't take me out of that movie at all.
Yeah, but Woody's not necessarily the front runner for what he's been in. He's usually that second character.
Yeah, but if you look at the franchises that he's been attached to in the last decade,
Oh, they're stellar.
I mean,
he's right up there with Samuel L. Jackson in the number of franchises that he's been, a secondary character in. Matt Smith, I think, might be a little harder for some people to separate from Doctor Who.
Did you know
because he
that
was the
Samuel L.
Doctor.
Jackson didn't have his first major role until he was 47 years old? Mm-hmm. That's crazy. That's crazy. Let's stay in Pages, Pixels, Pieces a little bit longer. Thanks for bringing that one up.
Yep.
I do want to mention Scum and Villainy is a book that Pablo Hidalgo is about to drop, where he took a look at all the villains. Really cool cover. But
I'm excited about that.
Looking at the
I feel-
smugglers, I think there's some Mandalorians in there.
Hidalgo's the chief
Of canon.
lore master, right? Kind
Yeah,
of guy?
that's
Okay.
you should tweet him. That's his new title.
The chief lore master.
Yeah, that I'm sure that would go over really well. But it looks like a really fascinating book. Probably will check that out. I don't know what I'm doing with my novel reading right now because I wanted to go and get the second Thrawn novel. Not hearing a whole lot of great stuff about it. Ooh, thinking I'm going to wait and get the solo novelization.
Just do it.
Just do it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I might honestly read Scum and Villainy before anything. I've also had a lot of temptation of getting some of those location books and the vehicle books, just kind of like reading up on that stuff.
I mean, like
It's easier to start and stop.
I know people are like, oh, but that's constantly changed. It's just kind of nice to kind of see some of that, because it's really nice pictures in that one that I got. Because I mean, it's all the various props, it's close-ups of those things, and there is actual official, lore in there. I mean, it's kind of nice. It's a nice table, like coffee table piece, honestly.
Absolutely. Well, let us know what you think. Are you checking out any comics right now? Are you interested in the Scum and Villainy book? Is there a villain or a smuggler or some kind of character that has to be in that Scum and Villainy book for you to really enjoy it? Let us know down in the comments below. Really would be interested to see what villains you want to learn more about. I would hope Cad Bane would be somewhere in that novel. I met my first person the other day online who doesn't like Cad Bane. I've never met a Star Wars fan who didn't like Cad Bane.
Oh yeah, he was.
You didn't like Cad Bane?
No.
Cad Bane, the blue guy with the
Yes.
tubes. Like that guy? Mm-mm. How do you? Wow. Okay. Well, I'm not going to disrespect you, but
He's the assassin, right?
yeah, with the big cowboy hat.
Yeah, no.
Looks like Indiana Jones kind of.
I hate to say it, but I really, for as much as I really got into the Clone Wars after you guys tied me to the chair and forced me to watch it, I didn't much care for a lot of the villains. I didn't care for Cad Bane. I didn't care for Zero the Hutt.
Well, no one cared for Zero the
Didn't
Hutt.
care for Hondo.
Hondo really wasn't a villain, though. He was a troublemaker, but not a villain.
Antagonist as opposed to a main villain.
Right.
Didn't much care for him either. None of the bad guys that they introduced in that really...
They made Dooku a hell of a lot cooler, though.
They did. The ones that were in the films, I think they did a stellar job with Grievous and Dooku and those guys. The ones that they created for the show didn't really tickle my fancy.
I can roll with that, but
I thought
you mentioned
you liked the Pre Vizsla and the whole Mandalorian plot. and
Okay,
everything.
I do like them.
Yeah, take it back.
Converted.
Let's stay in the Clone Wars era, though, because this kind of works perfectly for our next topic, which is the fact that Clone Wars stuff did drop for Battlefront 2. We have a lot more in-depth look at that stuff, but let's just get player reaction. Jesse, you've played it, and what is? Give me 3 pros, 3 cons.
Okay, so this just dropped this week. It's like the beginning of all the Clone Wars DLC. Pros is they finally introduced some character appearances for the Assault, Heavy, and Recon classes.
Okay, 1 con. Or 1 pro.
You get the 41st and the 327th.
Cool.
So that's basically
Yellow and green.
Yellow and then camouflage, like Kashyyyk camouflage.
Yeah.
The Kashyyyk camouflage is pretty popular right now because it doesn't stand out, on some of the, like, white armor stands out, and everything. So even though you're green, you blend in a little bit more on, like, Naboo or something. So, little disappointed. I was under the impression we were supposed to get basically a button to play strictly Clone Wars era maps. And when I fired the game up, there was like this option and it was like and everything, but then there was a new, like on a hardware size, a sound glitch.
Okay.
I'm pretty certain it's Battlefront 2 strictly related because none of my other games do this to me. I have a pretty decent gaming PC, so. But I had to restart the game a couple times because the sound would quit. So then when I came back in, that option to play basically just Clone Wars like disappeared.
Yeah.
And I had to sit there and like mess with all the different game modes before it actually popped up on the home screen again.
You mentioned the 2 clone troopers. I want to read some details just on the 2. So we mentioned the Elite Corps that you mentioned that was on the Battle of Kashyyyk. That was along with Master Yoda. They are most known for coming to the aid of the Wookiees on Kashyyyk. Other notable appearances where they did serve on Geonosis, where they were sent to assist Anakin Skywalker in retaking the planet, which I believe is an arc in Clone Wars. It's like the second time they go back to Clone Wars.
The
Geonosis.
327 is that referenced in Solo with the?
I can't
Min
remember.
Band?
They're known for their yellow markings, and they were known for being led by Aayla Secura.
Or is it the 41st?
41st would be 41st Elite Corps and Elite Corps are the same thing. They're the camouflage troopers.
Yeah. Anyway.
I'm just reading it from the website. You can look it up if you want to.
Yeah, I have to look it up.
You can look it up. But just letting people know. And apparently these things are expensive, right? 20,000 credits or 500 crystals?
That's actually not that bad.
It's not?
In
For the game?
comparison to some of the other character skins and everything that cost like 70,000 credits.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I mean, if you play just heavy, you can buy these skins for just heavy and be done with it.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Right now, the end game, there's a deal that basically you can get both. Like, I'm not sure what to call it. I'm drawing a blank. It's been a long day for you, folks.
Yeah. Hey, when you mentioned the troopers mentioned in the solo, the ones on Minbin, like the 5th episode, the 5's episode of Clone Wars, those are the same. I don't know if that's what you're thinking of.
Yeah, is that like I think it's like the same core. Anyway.
Okay, cool.
Downside, and this is really EA, if you just happen to catch this.
If you're keeping note, we
podcast,
have 1 pro, 2 cons already.
For heaven's sakes, give the clone officer class armor. It makes absolutely no sense for a clone officer to be running around on the front lines and basically as a fleet uniform. Like, Commander Cody was in armor. Captain Rex was in armor. Okay. Commander Wolf in armor. Give me some armor for the officer class.
Valid points. A couple other things that are new. We have an arcade mode, Naboo Palace Hangar, which would be pretty fun. I'm assuming that's just like steamrolling droids, right?
I played this for like a good 4 hours the other day.
Okay.
Did not get the new map once.
Oh, bummer. Ewok Hunt is permanent now, which is kind of fun. It's like a horror story for
It's
Star
terrifying.
Wars. Because all you have, if you're the troopers, all you have is night vision in your blaster, and you just hear Houdini.
And well, you get a flashlight.
Yeah.
Okay, but the flashlight is like it's only on for like I'm just gonna throw a number to say like 10 seconds.
Okay.
And then it like has to recharge. So
no.
for like a brief moment, like basically you want to save your flashlight for like when you think there's a fuzzy killer thing around your feet. It is kind of frightening.
New end of round screen, and then I'm looking at this new playlist tiles. It mentions the prequel era maps, and it looks like there are a number of people mentioning a glitch. So something that we'll keep our eyes on. Back to EA Play, when it was announced that Obi-Wan Kenobi, General Grievous, Anakin Skywalker, and Count Dooku were set to arrive in Star Wars Battlefront 2, and the common questions we received revolved around the pricing. Price for those is now 35,000 credits. Which is that considered reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing a lot, consistent and everything, depending on the game mode, if you're playing through like the various in-game events that they have, you can get those credits pretty easily.
Looks like there's a ×2 bonus multiplier, and then it looks like there's a lot of bug fixes. There is an issue with the extraction in Jabba's palace that they fixed. There was an issue on Death Star 2. Fixed the issue that allowed players to reach an area behind the armor racks. Apparently that wasn't supposed to be a thing. The Bespin glitch, and then something mentioned with Boba Fett. He could stand on one of the ledges. It was not easily accessible to other players. So that was another glitch with Jabba's palace, which, whatever. Fair enough. And that's the major updates. I feel like we were pretty thorough.
Yeah,
I just wanted to dive in more that now that you've had experience to play, and we can kind of list out things. Okay, this is really what is new, and there's more to come because we're going to be getting updates now for the next 11 months.
The roadmap kind of got leaked. I believe they're going to release Grievous next.
Okay.
Because I think he's like the closest to being ready. I believe they're going to follow that up with Obi-Wan in December.
Okay.
Followed by Dooku, I believe, in January. And then after that, you'll be getting Anakin, and it's assumed that the 501st Trooper skins will follow suit with Anakin, since the 501st is also known as Vader's Fist.
Right.
So that just kind of coincides
That's why
with
Battlefront 2, like the original Battlefront 2 campaign, was so awesome.
Oh, so good.
If you are more likely to play Battlefront 2 now, or maybe you're going to go back and play the game, maybe you fell out of love with it because you beat the story and then the multiplayer just got kind of repetitive, Now you got all this Clone Wars content. You're going back. Let us know what you're experiencing right now in the game. We'd love to get your feedback on the new Battlefront 2 Clone Wars content. Stay on target Stash or Blast is the next topic. This is where we just throw out the additional headlines that we just don't have time to really talk about, and we're just going to go Red Robin and find out if we stash it or blast it. The first one comes to us because of Dave Bautista. He reveals that he has auditioned for Star Wars multiple times, most known now, I would say, as Drax in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and for being outspoken about who he wants to direct the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Stash it or blast it. Dave Bautista in a Star Wars movie. Jesse, blast it or stash it?
I'll stash it, but depends on what kind of role. That's how it is. If they
One
don't
of Jabba's guards. I think that's where he would fit.
I,
in like Return of the Jedi.
I hate to say it, but I see him fitting in more with like an underworld kind of character.
Yeah. David, stash it or blast it?
I will stash it. I'm sorry that he didn't get any roles in the Star Wars that he's been trying for, but if he's not the right guy, he's not the right guy. But I don't want him to stop trying out because maybe there will be a part in one of the future movies.
I'm going to blast it for now, but ask me in 10 years, I'll probably stash it then.
Okay.
Number 2 on the list, booze. Alcohol served at the cantina at Galaxy's Edge, the Star Wars theme park that's set to open in 2019. David, stash it or blast it? Alcohol at the Star Wars park.
I'm going to stash the heck out of it. I think this is a little late in the game for Disney to finally start allowing alcohol in their theme parks.
Jesse, stash or blast it?
Totally stash it, because think about it. You know, you get a bar fight, and this has got to be mandatory. The jizz band that they have playing, they stop for a moment for the fight, but then pick up right where they left off after the fight ends.
I'd love that.
And the winner of said fight has to toss a coin at the bartender and say sorry for the mess.
Do you think they'll actually have a real band playing, or do you think it'll be like
it should be a real jizz band playing jizz.
Or do you think
You know
it'll
what?
be
I'd be okay if it's like really done like I don't know, like
Chuck E. Cheese animatronics?
yeah, you know, like as long as they look good and the music is
The same song.
yeah,
God,
nonstop.
Working
hate
there
to be
has to be
that-
terrible.
that'd be awful. The
Remember when we
bartender.
said
It'd
this
be
was going to be
fantastic.
rapid fire? Yeah, that was
Yep.
a lie.
Okay.
Third topic here in Stash It or Blast It. Star Wars. More flop news as franchise suffers this embarrassment after Solo. We're talking about The Meg, which is this shark movie that came out recently, and it's made a lot more money than the Solo theatrical release. In fact, we're learning that in just a few weeks, it's managed $412.8 million, which is more than Solo's $392.6 million. Stashed or blast it. The Meg is a better movie than Solo.
I'm going to blast that. I would say they marketed themselves better, but they also didn't have to film 2 entire movies to put out one good product.
Stash it or blast it, Jesse. The Meg is a better movie to outdo Solo.
I'm gonna blast it, but I'm on the same page as David Gilbert, and I also every time I hear the title "The Meg," I think of Meg from Family Guy, which is
Shut
just
up,
kind of
Meg.
comical. Yeah. I'm also curious because Solo is coming out on Blu-ray DVD this month. I'm just kind of curious how those sales are going to do, and I would laugh if those sales are through the roof, and it's going to be like those are all the people who refused to see it in theater, but now they're going to enjoy it and see what they missed.
It's exciting. I'm going to... I don't think it's really flop news. I'm going to blast it because I think the whole issue is marketing and that it was placed in May. I think if you put that movie in December, like they should have done, they probably make like $700, $800 million.
They should just
off that
hire us.
movie.
They
Probably
really should.
They should just hire us. Staying on target is the next topic and this our next segment, and it's the last segment for our show this week here on episode 45. We're just cruising along.
But this is a good topic to talk about this time.
No, I think it's really good, and it kind of goes in line with the last topic of Stash or Blast, which is this idea that Hollywood filmmakers are no longer threatened by Star Wars. That there was a time where you would see movies back away when Star Wars showed up on the calendar. Something very reminiscent of what we got where this past year in May, they ended up actually moving up the first Avengers a week, and then you had a couple other movies react to that position change. It used to be that way for Star Wars. Not the case right now. According to Forbes, Star Wars Episode 9 is going to have to face off against Jumanji 3, opening on December 13th.
They're making a third Jumanji.
Yes,
They are.
Why?
because it made
the-
buku money. It made like
A lot of money.
nearly $1 billion, right?
I can look it
Can
up.
you look it up? I thought it made like $900 million worldwide. It was a good movie.
I watched it, but I'm sorry, I'm stuck with the original one and that
900
golden line of with Robin Williams jumping out of the bushes in his leaf camo, yelling, "What year is it?" I'm sorry, you can't top that.
$962.1 million.
You could make a movie about someone's bowel movements, and if it made $900 million plus worldwide, there'd be a sequel.
Yeah.
That's really
In the first movie, we brought you number 2. In this movie, here's number 3. All right, so I'm not done yet. There's more movies. Fox's Death on the Nile is coming out. That could change, though, with the Fox Disney deal, though.
That is the sequel to Murder on the Orient Express. That's an Agatha Christie book.
And you saw the first movie. You were like so-so about the movie, right?
The movie was good.
Okay,
I mean, the book's always better, but the movie was fun to watch.
You also have Wonder Woman 1984 in November and Frozen 2. Mm-hmm. You also have, I don't think this is going to be a big threat, but Sonic the Hedgehog and Terminator. It's this idea that you don't have like mega blockbusters.
Frozen 2, can't they just let it go?
Wonder Woman could maybe have an impact. Funny. It doesn't seem like a big blockbuster is looking to threaten Episode 9, but it does look like there's at least 4 that we named, 3 that we named that are children's movies that could cause parents to have to take Johnny out here to see this movie. So it might limit the number of rewatches for some Star Wars fans.
Honestly, I think it's more of a time thing. You know, when you look when the original trilogy came out. Okay, so the first Star Wars movie came out. Nobody knew how that was going to do. It ended up being fantastic. You know, most amazing thing in the world. So yeah, and then Empire's coming out. I could totally see where other, like Hollywood. Let's pick a different one because we can't compete with that. You know, same thing with Return. In the 90s, you had the prequel movies, kind of into the early 2000s. Kind of the same thing. Now you have and then you get to basically what I call the start of the comic book hero movies. You had the Tobey Maguire
Spider-Man.
Can't forget Blade. Blade's the one that kind of kicked the whole thing off.
So you start seeing that. And then, obviously Disney owns, obviously Star Wars and Marvel, movies. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, so you got the same company who's pumping out 2 different franchises. Of course, Disney's not going to be afraid to go, hey, yeah, we're going to put this in, close proximity. And maybe that was kind of the downfall, obviously, with Solo, is you put that right in there after Infinity War, I believe, was like a week before. Mm-hmm. Bad idea.
Do you think fan reaction, the divisiveness that follows Last Jedi, David, has an impact on the story being published looking ahead to Episode 9? Because I think theoretically, if you think that Force Awakens is going to make more than $2 billion globally, and then The Last Jedi only makes like $1.3 billion, your hope is for Episode 9, the final installment of the Skywalker saga, it would be the highest grossing Star Wars movie of all time, right?
I don't know if they're going to have the hype for this movie as they did for Episode 7. Because going into Episode 7, there was a clean slate. We didn't know what we were getting. The fan base was rallied together. They were all excited. The people who are not diehard fans like us, they were excited because we hadn't had a Star Wars movie. Well, we hadn't had a good Star Wars movie in 30 years. I think that there's a lot of things that are going to play into this. I think that a lot of the Hollywood studios are thinking that with the divisiveness of The Last Jedi and the flop that was Solo and the controversy behind Rogue One, that maybe Star Wars is becoming a fan-based type movie where it's just going to be the fans who go see it and not necessarily the general public, especially if that general public is somebody who's completely not familiar with the storyline and they think they need to go watch 8, 9, 10 movies in order to get caught up on the story. I think that there's some worry because Star Wars recently, since Disney took over, has not done well in China. I don't know if they've ever figured out why it hasn't.
It didn't even make $50 million in China with Solo, right?
I don't think it did.
I believe
at
they
all.
pulled it from the theaters with only 2 weeks in theaters or something along those lines.
I love how he says theater. It makes me smile every time.
So
it's a cute little thing you do. I'm not judging you. I think it's kind of adorable.
It's Midwest.
It's Midwest.
I think moving Solo from a December release to a May release, I think that hurt the franchise, and I think it's going to hurt Episode 9.
Do you think they gave a false impression of the strength of Star Wars, though? Because I'm just trying to play both sides. Now you have a Star Wars in December of 2019. This movie could wreck, and do like $2.4 billion. I mean, it has the possibility of doing that. It also has, the opposite chance. Do you think that people see Star Wars moved in May and they're like, oh, wow, Star Wars just doesn't have the pull anymore after episode 7?
Here's
But
the thing.
I think people really need to realize there were like 4 other massive movies within a
came
4-week spread.
Think of it like this, though. Okay, so we got that first trailer for The Force Awakens. Okay, you know what the most amazing, badass moment of that trailer was? Seeing this cloaked and black figure walking through a snowy forest and then igniting that lightsaber. And yeah, you had the whole thing with crossguard on a lightsaber. That was scary. If you're a fan of the lore and everything, that was like, whoa, who's this? Because I'm like a big sword buff. The crossguard on a lightsaber did not surprise me. I was like, that's awesome. It was intimidating. I was like, who is this? This is definitely a villain. Who is this?
The only way you make Force Awakens better, I think, is you let Chewie hug Leia, and you leave Kylo Ren's mask on the entire movie.
So in terms, it comes back to marketing. So if with episode 9, I don't know, if all of a sudden I see Luke's lightsaber from Return of the Jedi and igniting in there, okay, where'd you find that? How's that there? That's going to get me excited, or, you get what I'm saying?
No, I totally do.
They really have to fix this.
But they have time to fix it. I mean, we're sitting here, we have a year and a half before this movie drops. I don't expect anything until Super Bowl Sunday in February. So they have ample time. If they start promoting this movie in 2018, they're going to burn everybody out. Release something little Super Bowl weekend, then you'll really get the fans going at Star Wars Celebration. I'm sure they follow it up with something at D23, and then you're going to have a very aggressive promotions. This is the end. 40 years building to this. You're going to get those kind of lines, and then you just hope and pray that movie delivers, because if fans leave unsatisfied from episode 9, the Skywalker saga is not done justice.
That's why I think we need a 2-parter. I really do, because it gives so much ability for them to course correct, and attempt to please the fans. And then that's assuming the writing and the script is
And that's also assuming they feel the same way that we do. Because there's some things I want to see changed. There's some things you want to see changed. JJ might just say, you know what, this is where Rian took us. I'm going to do my best to leap from him. I think Ryan's, a couple of his ideas are going to go by the wayside.
And it goes back to what we were talking about with General Hux. He was a scary person in 7, and he was a ragdoll and a clown in 8. Same thing with Snoke. Snoke was scary and intimidating in 7, and now he's in 4 different pieces.
If Episode 9 is just one movie, though, how long is that movie? Because The Last Jedi is the longest Star Wars movie to date at 2:36.
You're going to have to give me that same amount of movie time. And Episode 8, honestly, if they would have cut some of the chase scene out, Canto Bight, it would not even warranted.
I saw this great meme, and I cannot believe that I did not think of this until I saw this meme. Why did Rose and Finn save the animals from Canto Bight and not the slave children? They left the kids in slavery, and they freed the animals.
Here's a ring.
But why didn't they take the kids?
She gave him a ring.
A Cracker Jack ring. I mean, isn't that like a legitimate point? I never thought of it.
That ring is
they
hot
left
posh.
the kid.
I would have a Cracker Jack.
Why didn't they save the kids? They saved the pets. Just one more reason why I hate that Canto Bight sequence.
Yeah, they needed the animal to
Look how
escape.
Look at David's face.
Confirm Rian Johnson hates children.
I now feel like I don't like those characters even more. The only thing that's now surprising to me is that it was Finn and not Poe who made such a bad decision.
I guess you could argue that they were being actively chased, and they're now escape prisoners, so maybe they're under more of a threat of deadly force kind of thing.
Why couldn't the kids get on the back of one of those Harry Potter creatures?
It beats...
Well, that's the whole point. They were going to get beaten more. You get introduced to those creatures with the kids getting shocked and stuff.
Well, I think it was potential. I mean, would you want to escape with a handful of kids and head straight into another danger, a war zone danger?
Let's take a bunch of 10-year-old kids and introduce them to the First Order. So maybe they
Yeah,
did do justice
you could
by
you could
leaving
argue
the
that
slaves.
too. It wasn't.
This is how we win the war, Jesse. Saving the ones we love.
I know, but here's the thing: like, what if they would have rescued them, returned to the fleet, and then they're floating down to Crate, and then they're getting picked off in the transports?
You know, that would be a new hope, as if they had that little boy with the broom that had been saved and got on Crate, and now he's in the Millennium Falcon hanging out with Rey and Poe and Finn and Leia, just playing with the Force.
I get what you say. I'm seeing the issue, but I mean, you could also just sit there and argue, like in the terms of, it wasn't exactly safe for them to actually go with Finn and Rose.
I sometimes argue the entire movie, but you know what? Star Wars is about how you interpret it. I think all movie is subjective, and we enjoy what we enjoy of it. We dislike what we dislike of it. But it's interesting to know. It will be interesting to see how all these movies perform. Trying to get back on topic. It'll be interesting to see how all these movies perform in December of next year.
If I were Disney, I'd be a little worried.
I think the greatest threat to the box office for this final saga film is going to be 1984, Wonder Woman 1984 in late November.
I don't think so. I think it's going to be Frozen 2.
Oh, you're right.
I think more parent. I mean, I'm a movie buff. I have that AMC A-list thing. I get my 3 movies a week. I will see all of these movies, the Jumanji 3, the Wonder Woman, Sonic the Hedgehog, Terminator, Star Wars. I will see all those movies. But if I'm a parent and I'm going to take my family to the movies, which could easily be $50 or more for a family of 4 to go to the movie, and that's in Quincy where it's cheap, more or less as St. Louis and New York where tickets are $18 a person, where it could be $120 for a weekend out. How many movies are you going to see over that Thanksgiving, Christmas break? 1, 2, 3. If I had young kids, I would pick Frozen 2 first. I'd probably pick Jumanji second, and Star Wars third. If I was taking my kids to the movies,
This really isn't a good strategy by Disney.
I don't think it is.
I mean, I get what you're saying, Jesse, about the whole, we own all these different movie franchises. We're just going to throw them in there and let the consumer decide. But, you're really not allowing, because Frozen 2 and Star Wars separated by a month could both bring in you a couple of billion.
Again, we're not on their strategic marketing team. Or
There's probably better reasons why we're not. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen in December of 2019? Do you think that Star Wars Episode 9 will be the longest Star Wars movie of all time? Do you think it will be the highest grossing Star Wars movie of all time? Do you think it'll be taken down by movies before and after its release? Let us know down in the comments below. I think it's a great question. I think it's going to be a topic that we revisit more and more as we get closer to the date, because I think there's a good chance that we'll see some other movies move out of the way. But right now, there's 8 or 9 titles that could steal some money away from Episode 9. But we're on Episode 45 of Beyond the Blast Horse. And that's going to wrap it up. I think it's been a solid episode, a lot of good conversation diving in deep. Did not do the Facebook Live this week. We'll go ahead and do that maybe next weekend. We kind of had busy adulting to do. I mean, you had to work, and I had to clean.
It's been chaotic.
You pulled your back, bro.
Yep.
Bending over for a hose.
No,
Was that,
he
how did
fought
you actually
off a
do it?
Mountain tiger. And
Embarrassingly enough.
Don't want to get into it? No, that's no
my
problem.
story's
I
better.
was fighting a rhinoceros and a polar bear and a panzer tank.
That's like how I cut my eye one time getting into a fight with a kid in a wheelchair. That's going to do it with episode 45 Beyond the Blast Doors. Thank you so
Kid
much
in
for
wheelchair
joining
won.
us and come back. He did, in fact. He did, in fact. May the force be with you. See you soon.